In a political science professor now, Wes Leckrone, and we are going to talk about something tonight that we talk about an awful lot at the Daily Times and delcotimes.com. And my guess is it's talked about at the campus of Widener University, and it's talked about coffee shops and in newsstands all over Delaware County. And we are going to talk about politics, and our timing obviously is perfect, coming on the heels last night of the President's State of the Union address. Again, I'm joined by Wes Leckrone, political science professor here at Widener. My featured columnist, Chris Friend, is also joining us. Wes, as it turns out, last week's bad weather, I didn't realize it at the time, but in terms of timing, actually it turned out pretty good. It put us right in the after effects of last night's State of the Union address. Just a quick reminder to our viewers on delcotimes.com. It is a live interactive show. You can go to delcotimes.com, log on and take part in a live chat. We've been soliciting questions from our readers at the Daily Times all day, and we'll get to some of those questions in a few minutes. Wes, let me start with you. Let's take a look at the State of the Union from last night. Anything in there that really surprised you?
What really surprised me, I think, the most was President Obama's willingness to say that Congress probably wouldn't get much done. I study a lot of state and local government, so what was really interesting for me was the fact that he basically said, Congress and Washington aren't going to work, but the states and the local governments are working.
Yeah.
And therefore, I'm going to work with those state and local governments, particularly those primarily Democratic states, on issues of importance, like minimum wage, things in relationship to pre-K education, marriage equality, that sort of thing. So I found that to be very interesting in a State of the Union, so much emphasis placed on state and local government.
One of the things that really struck me was that was something that we've talked about before, and this idea that one of the things that is really becoming evident anytime you talk to someone is that people are really upset more and more with the fact that nothing ever seems to get done in Washington, D.C. And I think he sort of drew a little bit of a line in the sand there last night, and he said, look, you can go ahead and do that way if you want, but I am moving ahead with you or without you. Chris, it seemed pretty evident that he's going to move on his own.
He's certainly going to try. I think the president did miss one of the larger points, though. In trying to raise the minimum wage, it becomes a tax on business, and that's a debate for another time. But what none of these politicians seem to understand is you can't just cut your way out of bad economic times, and you can't just tax your way out of it either. You've got to grow your way out of it. So rather than raise the minimum wage, maybe we should be worrying about how we can become a manufacturing nation again. Yeah. And because we have the world's largest supply of energy that we're not using, that translates into the cheap transportation costs. With the lowest cost of energy, we can become a manufacturing nation again. No country can survive, let alone prosper, if it doesn't make things. We need to get back to the basics, and that's how you're going to get real wages. People can buy houses and have disposable income, not artificially inflating the minimum wage.
We brought in some of the students, the political science majors here at Widener, and we're going to sample their opinion now. What say you, young future people of the world? Whose side are you falling on as we look at the State of the Union? Are you tired of the gridlock? Are you ready to see something actually done? Go ahead, fire away.
Yes, I think that as a political science major of 4 years, I'm a senior now. I've noticed that gridlock is something that's it's just a reality in politics. And I've had Professor Leckrone, for the past 4 years in many classes, and a lot of them we go into detail about how difficult it is to get things passed even when you have cooperation. Yeah. So with all these points being made by the president last night, I think that it was good to see that he realized that it was not going to be it's not going to be an easy road to go ahead and get things done, but he's still pushing forward and attempting.
Quickly, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Michael Lachavati from Newtown Square, Pennsylvania.
All right, next up.
My name is Jamar Phillips. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm a senior political science major. And my opinion on the State of the Union this past Tuesday, it was interesting to hear him talk about things like economic inequality and other things like raising the minimum wage. And I felt like those were important issues to talk about, but I wanted to hear him speak more about how he was going to get more agenda items done. I know that gridlock seems to be the reality of Washington right now. But I wanted him to say that he was going to find more ways to build relationships across the aisle. And I felt like that was something he was kind of missing. I felt like that was, he was willing to kind of give up on Congress. And I don't think a president can really manage to, I don't think a president should do that. Even if times are hard and even if he loses his majority in the Senate or he doesn't have a majority in the House, maybe he should still find ways to build relationships with people.
That's a great point. Young ladies in the back, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Aubrey D'Angelo. I'm from Brookhaven, Pennsylvania.
Delco, go ahead.
And my opinion in terms of the State of the Union was that I was surprised, just like Dr. Leckrone, about how willing Obama was not to put the blame on Congress so much as to suggest that we take alternative methods to get things done in this country. And I do think that I did like what he said about the minimum wage, just because while like I know a lot of people who would benefit a lot from that and from an increase in minimum wage, just because the prices of things are increasing so much, and families that are struggling to get by don't have the means to pay their bills and provide for their families. But also, I do see a decline in manufacturing, and how so much of our stuff is made abroad now. I do think we should be putting more emphasis on increasing our manufacturing strength here too.
Next.
My name's Nicole Krause. I'm a sophomore political science major. I'm from Princeton, New Jersey. I think that it's really good that he's talking about economic inequality. It's an issue that is international, but I think it would have been better if he talked more about foreign affairs, especially the loss of I think it would have been better if he focused more on Syria and building confidence internationally about America's superpower.
Westwood, you saw that the president was pretty much a man of his word. He didn't waste any time. He got right out on the road. In fact, was here in Pennsylvania today. He said visited a couple of manufacturing plants, was at a Costco store in Maryland, and then came to a steel plant in western Pennsylvania. And he talked about something that I think might actually resonate with people, especially people who are struggling and workers who may not be eligible for a retirement or a 401k plan. It's something called, he's referring to as MyRA, which is going to give an opportunity for a program for retirement savings for people that don't have that. And I think those two things, that program coupled with this call for the minimum wage. Now, the one thing that I thought was interesting is that what he actually called for last night was for going ahead and doing that without Congress's approval for contracts that are using federal workers, which he can do, although there's some people who question that. In terms of just bumping that, and we're not talking about a small bump. We're going from 725. He wants to go to 1010. And Chris makes the point that always gets made that a lot of people think that what you do that is you cost people a lot of jobs. So what do you think his chances are of getting either one of these things done?
Oh, I think he does have a decent chance of doing it through executive order, but the idea that Congress is going to pass a minimum wage increase, particularly bumping it up to 10.10 an hour, is very unlikely. I think the future of the minimum wage in the United States is going to be a federalism issue. I think there's more discussion about the notion that, in New York City, it might make sense to have a minimum wage of 10.10, but it doesn't make sense in Mississippi.
Right.
And you have to account for different economies in the country. And I think Republicans are probably going to make that case more because it kind of takes some of the rough edges off of saying, no, we don't want people making minimum wage. You make a more economic issue. And I think that probably will be what happens from here on out.
Chris?
Well, I was going to say, and the Democrats are going to gear up and try and use this as a wedge issue come the November elections. What's going to be interesting is, number one, will it work? And it sounds great to a lot of voters. Can the Republicans, defend their position of not raising it? Can they articulate their vision? To date, they've had a major problem doing that. And I know that That's going to be a major issue here in Pennsylvania with Governor Corbett, who's already said he's not in favor of raising it. Can he sell it? Can he sell his idea? He's not been able to do that, which is why his numbers are so low, and we're going to see how that plays out.
Wes, as I said last night, a lot of people considered that the State of the Union basically the opening salvo of what's going to be the midterm elections come November. And here in Pennsylvania, sitting at the top of that Pennsylvania ballot is going to be none other than Mr. Tom Corbett, governor of Pennsylvania, first-term Republican who will be seeking his second term. Is in fact going to have a challenger in the Republican primary, although it's not expected that he will lose that. But the governor is really besieged. He has problems. How do you see, is there a path for Tom Corbett out of this and to get reelected?
I think at the present time, the best path out is depending on who his actual opponent is. And the one way that he probably can do this is by going negative. And again, I think a candidate like Allison Schwartz would be easier to hit on. She's a little bit more vulnerable because she is a member of Congress. We also have to remember that this is an off-year election, right? And typically, Republicans will turn out higher in an off-year election. So there are some national issues that are associated with this, and part of that might influence the way this all plays out. There's a path, but not running on his record, probably.
You know, I have gone out on a limb in my blog, the Heron's Nest blog, which you can see most days on delcotimes.com. And everyone asks me how it is that I have come to this conclusion, and I'm not quite sure exactly why, but I am out on the record as saying that I do believe that Tom Corbett is going to be reelected. Chris, I have a feeling that you might disagree with that.
I do. And, Wes, I do respectfully disagree. I think that Pennsylvanians are going to do the ABC. It's anyone but Corbett. I don't think it matters that Allison Schwartz is the most liberal opponent right now in the Democratic field. I think people are so fed up with Tom Corbett, and that includes his own party, that it's going to be anyone but Corbett. I think I think he is where George Bush was in George Bush's second term, that everything George W. Bush did, it just fell apart, even if it really wasn't of his own making. Nothing Tom Corbett can do right now seems to be working. And I think what you're seeing is, it seems like some of his staff are kind of resigned to that, and they're just kind of checking out. There was the funny incident of a couple weeks ago. They did the Farmers for Corbett ad, except that the farmers weren't Pennsylvanians. They weren't even Americans. They were Canadians growing wheat, which we don't even grow in Pennsylvania. It's little things like that that add up, and that creates a big problem. And I think, and the Penn State issue, I know it's very tough to poll. I think that's going to be the albatross around the neck that's not going to go away. They are salivating at the chance of to take their revenge on Tom Corbett at the ballot box.